So yeah, I mean, obviously, like close series. So yeah, not expected to be as close as it was, but I guess there's a little bit of potential for there to be some heat given how I guess both teams have projected early on in the season. I think Licorice was talking about like, hey, we didn't even have our team, we didn't scrim yet. Like, I expected some improvement from last week where they kind of looked completely out of place. But did you expect today to go how it did?
Look, I said this beforehand. If we win or if we lose, like I just want to see us play better than we did yesterday or last
Mhm,
week, and we looked
mhm.
so much worse. It was crazy how bad we looked game 1. I did not expect to see 2024 SR on the Rift. It was genuinely
Yeah,
disappointing, and I was like ready to go on a tear. But
yeah,
thankfully, game 2, they turn around. Like game 2, even if we had lost game 2, I would have been okay, just because
sure.
they actually played the game. But then game 3 comes around and Palafox kind of redeems himself. It gave me so many heart attacks. I did not expect it this way. My expectation was like, look, Lion is playing with Lions, who's
Mhm,
very far away.
mhm.
Playing with ping issues and whatnot. It's probably not going to be close, but god damn it, man, my heart.
Man, I mean, you're right. The first two games kind of, I think, went the way that they should have gone based on how the game went in the beginning. The
Mm.
last game, I was like, it almost looked like, I mean, obviously, Palafox Yone is just insane. Like that guy, I can see why they banned that champion against him last week. Um, but it looked almost like Lions was like, I don't know if it was a ping issue, but there were a few engages on Rakan, which looked super sus. Like, he towered over the Yone. I
Yeah,
was
I
like,
know the
"Dude,
one you're
what are we
talking
doing
about.
here?" I was like, "Check his PayPal, man." Like, what was that?
You know what's funny? Just I'll let you go. But literally, Seus, who was co-streaming the game, was right after that play happened. They paused, and he was like, "Oh, it's so that they can PayPal him or
Yeah,
Pix, which
it
is what they
was
use in Brazil." But yeah, he was like, "Oh, it's so they can
yeah, yeah.
PayPal with Lions."
It was a little bit suspect. Like, what world do you think a Fed Yone is ever gonna die to a recon engage under turret like that? Like, there's no angle there, you know? Like,
Yeah,
what are you doing?
that was something else for
But,
sure.
uh it to go on the other side of it though too, it looked like Lion is still struggling with some of the stuff we saw last week, right? They're getting some strong early leads and then they just tend to throw. Like they tend to like push areas they shouldn't be pushing into. That two-man setup on top side where they got ambushed, right? Like where they set up in the top bush. They were
Oh
trying
yeah,
to
yeah, and it
jump.
was a 2v4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like, dude, SR read that so well. They flanked two people from River. It was doomed. I was like, you guys and even the casters like, you guys set that play up with zero vision. Like, what are we doing? Uh so yeah, there's definitely some I don't know. These are probably coachable things when they rewatch those VODs, but it looked more like they have a lot of growing to do, and it's probably too late right now for this part of the split.
So I actually have a couple things. So first, I want to respond to a comment saying the team communication is
Mhm,
funny: two Korean, one English, two Spanish. That's not how it
mhm,
works. They all speak English. Like Audi is straight up fluent. Lions is manageable in English. Saint and Hannah are all speaking English. Like this team used to have two Koreans last year. They spoke all English.
mhm.
In general, like Brazilian teams, for example, Loud, which everyone's like Loud or Pain. Loud has three Koreans. They all speak in English. They all communicate in English. Pain Gaming, same thing. They have two Koreans. They all speak in English. So it's not really an issue like the communication
Mhm.
in game. Out of game, sure, they have translators, but in game, it's fine. So I wanted to touch on that. Second thing is the first team that got eliminated actually is from the South because they play earlier than us. They started at
Yeah.
11 my time. So, like, what is that, 8 a.m. your time in LA?
Okay.
And it's Vivo who made it to the CBLOL finals last split.
Yeah.
It's a really strong team. And right after they lost, Seal, who's their head coach, tweeted out, he was like, look, we're not going on vacation. We have until
Yeah.
April, is it April 5th? Yeah, we have until April
Yep.
5th. We got a couple months. We're going to be scrimming. We're going to be practicing. And that's what I kind of want to see from the teams that get eliminated. I would not be
Agreed.
sad if you are Shopify and get eliminated in the 5th, 6th spot and you still go to Brazil and you still scrim and you get that experience. Because guess
Yeah.
what? Once the next split starts, the four teams that made it to Brazil are going to have so much more experience if you don't scrim. And I don't want to see
Right.
teams be taking vacation after two best of threes.
I agree. I agree. Like this is it's a wake up call for some teams, and hopefully we see them rise to that. The LTA announcement that streaming scrims is going to be allowed is also putting some fire under certain orgs, I think. And it's really interesting to see the discussion online about the people who support it and the people who don't. Very much from the competitive side. What's up, Flash? Very much from the competitive side. a lot of ex-players, coaches, all that, oh, this is terrible. Like, this is going to ruin team dynamics. It's going to ruin competitive integrity. I get that, but we're talking about one scrim day a week. We're not saying stream all of your scrims. This is an exhibition match type thing. Pull out the crazy stuff. Pull out the interesting stuff. Don't pull out your absolute best plays that you are specifically preparing for one other team. I think there's some common sense, and everyone's kind of going to the one side or the other. But I do think that to your point, if we see some of these teams get knocked out, stream 0 scrims when there are no stakes on the line, that's very telling, right? Like, if you're in off season already by next week, and we see 0 stream scrims until next season starts, that's kind of suspect.
Yeah, if you're DSG or Lion, you better be streaming. You better take FlyQuest and be like, hey, we'll stream you. We'll stream a scrim.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're the best team in the league, right? Like, if you can stream their scrims and you have nothing on the line, right? You're already out. Like, why not? It should be to your benefit. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens with it. I'm a big fan of it for entertainment purposes. I definitely acknowledge that there's some competitive integrity issues in terms of advantages for certain teams, and it does kind of harm the worst teams more. But at the same time, you just can be smart about how you schedule it. You can be smart about how you plan it. And I think overall it's good for the league. So entertainment is entertainment.
Karen Moser or Kelsey Moser is saying, I'm here to dispute everything with having watched the games because I was in C-Law all day. Am I in the right place? Yes, you are.
Yes. Yeah, Captain Flower says we got suits. I dig it, looking sharp. We're trying to get to the professional level now. My girlfriend is actually talking about this, but she really likes that in League they wear suits on stage like the coaches, because in Valorant they just wear jerseys, and she's like, I actually appreciate that. It's like a League thing that they do that.
That's funny. I actually completely dislike it. I wish we had Shopify jerseys for Revan and Turtle. I don't like the fact that they're going up in suits.
Yeah, it's like a old school, I think a lot of Korean coaches did it and all that, and so we kind of just carried it over to soccer. The football fans do that, so we can go either way with that. I think it's just whatever tradition, whatever you feel comfortable with. But yeah. So and then the other series, right? Dig and DSG, kind of a banger. I think there was this one I was looking forward to mostly because of all the trash talk, right, from both sides. XU obviously has some feelings about Dig, and then DSG, like Surdy, all that, like they were talking back and forth a lot. So,
what did you think of the series?
I mean, surprising, honestly, a little bit. It's surprising in some ways. Let's say this: if I were to put money on who's going to win the series at the beginning, I probably would put money on Dig. I'm a big believer in Dig, especially with Shaden coming back in. Like, I do think that last week was a bit of an outlier when you have someone who's playing not on the he's not your jungler, and Shaden was brought in because specifically because his ceiling is so high as a jungler, so you can't really, I think, match that output. But at the same time, I'm glad we got to see Surdy on some carries. Jax looks good. I was even saying, in game 1, I was watching with my girlfriend, I was like, if they let Surdy get on Jax, I think it's going to be a bit of a stomp, and he looked good on Jax. That's one of his champs. But
I actually thought DSG were going to win. I know Dig had, it's just they were splitting their scrim time between Lyra and Shaden, and I thought Hui was really underrated. But man, did Hui dude, his Leona ults, I think he hit 1 all game. It was really bad. And then his Blitzcrank, he landed hooks when they didn't matter, and then when they mattered, he just didn't hook anybody. He just kept missing them by a wide margin. It felt very Scary Jerry looked a lot less nervous than week 1, but it looked like Hui was the nervous one. It was very confusing to see what happened to that team. I thought in the beginning, look, this team probably has a higher ceiling just because the 5 of them are actually playing together. But yeah, I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, I definitely think the chemistry should have been better. I think they had a bit more chemistry than Dig did, but at the same time, I think the ceiling on a lot of Dig's players is just so high, right? We're expecting a lot out of Surdy and laning. We're expecting a lot out of Shaden coming in. Keen actually looked good the second 2 games. They gave Aurora was nasty. You just gotta, I guess, put him on champs that allow him to actually play more into the game. But it was messy for sure on both sides. Both teams kind of were just hitting each other a lot. So I Yeah, I think it's closer. Like I wouldn't say, oh, I would have gone with Dig 90%. It would have been like a 65 type situation, 60% situation. Versus like if they were playing any of the other top tier teams, I think like C9, right?
Yeah.
Any of those teams, I'd be going completely the other way. This was kind of the slugfest of the bottom half. Like,
well, now I'll let you pick this time because last week I picked. But who are you going for an upset between the two matches on Sunday? You get to pick.
Okay,
and then I'll argue the other upset.
Yeah. C9 and Fly, and TL versus 100 Thieves. So let's start with C9 versus Fly. I could try to make an argument. Okay, here I'll do it. I'll pick C9. Right.
All right.
I'm a big Fly believer, but you told me to pick the underdog.
I mean, it's called disputing everything for a reason.
Yeah, I'll pick C9 for the pure reasons that C9 is a team in an org that tends to run very well on momentum. They utterly smashed last week. I know it was line. I know it was like, okay, they should beat these guys, but they look clean doing it. I think Loki and Thanatos definitely look like they've leveled up a bit, in terms of Thanatos, at least from last season. He was smashing lane. Loki looks phenomenal. So I think if they just ride that, and they tend to do very well until they stop doing well. And so C9 oftentimes, what I've noticed in working with them for years too, is they tend to start very, very strong. And then they sort of taper off by the end of summer. So if you look at historically how well C9 has done split to split, year to year, their first half of every season is like usually their strongest portion of the league. All their major C9 teams that have like gone and set all these records, right? Like the 17-1 team and all that was all in spring. So I think right now momentum is very good for them. I think they're probably in good mood, right? Like they finally found a team chemistry that looks like it's working well. They have winning solo lanes. They have their bot duo back in place. Blabber's like not burnt out yet or anything. Like I think it's a good look, And I obviously Fly is going to be everyone's favorite. Fly absolutely destroyed last week, but Fly there's only down to go. Right, for Fly, the only place they can go is down. So I look for C9 tends to play up to their competition. Historically, I know last year was a bit of an outlier, but they tend to do better when they play against better teams. I think there's a chance that they could upset here. I'm looking for some really interesting picks from Loki, from Thanatos. Hopefully Reaper's been cooking a little bit, but they also probably see this as like this is their real test. Right, they knew Lion was going to be kind of a warm up, but to beat the actual defending champion that everyone thinks is unbeatable right now, this would show that C9 is actually deserving of that number one, maybe if not number 2 spot in the league. Because right now, I think a lot of people are doubting from last year.
So I'll give you that much. I'll give you that C9 look a little bit more coordinated than they did last year. Last year, it seemed like they were doing one thing and doing it all the time, and they kind of got exposed. I think that with the addition of Loki, it seems like their Blabber is playing better with like the mid jungle synergy is playing better. I think their early games were good last year. They're good this year. They were great last year. They're great this year. Again, 2 game sample size. I'll give you all of that. But then here's my counter argument. The big problem with C9 was that when it came to mid to late game team fighting, they somehow always found a way to lose. And when it comes to FlyQuest, when it comes with a 10,000 gold deficit, they somehow always found a way to win. So you are putting someone whose strength is in getting early game leads and is kind of weak afterwards to someone who doesn't care about those early game leads because their strength is, we will not throw this game. We will find a way. We will outdraft you. Whipple had a lot of words about draft. We talked about that. Did we? Yeah, I think we talked about that last week. Either way, I think no matter what Cloud9 does, I don't think they have the firepower to put the knockout onto FlyQuest. Maybe they'll win a game. I don't even think they're going to win a game. I think both games what's going to happen is Cloud9's going to have an early lead, and then slowly coming into mid game, they're going to dance around Atakan or something's going to happen, and FlyQuest is going to get their lead. FlyQuest have been looking even better in the early game lead. Like their macro was really solid. The way they're team fighting with like Masu's positioning is impeccable. I think he looks like the best AD carry in the league. I was a big Yon believer, but man, after watching Masu for the past like 3 months, he's been leveling up. He's continuing to playing at that level. I think that there's no way that I can see a Cloud9 out team fighting this team with a worse mid laner. I mean, Jojo last year, Jojo was on the Zeri and he was like popping off and doing this and like playing aggressive. Loki doesn't have that play style. he's following Blabber. And you've talked about this before. Blabber tends to crabber sometimes. So
okay, fair. Which is really interesting too, because historically also C9 was never known as the team that can't team fight, right? Like they used to just out hands people. They would make horrible decisions and out hands people. Now that was to be I don't want to say anything with Flaming, but like that was with Berserker, right? So Berserker is one of the best hands players probably in the world. And then now we're replacing him with Sven, who is a very competent ADC. By no means is he handsless, but I don't think his mechanical ceiling is like that of Berserker. So maybe Loki can get there. Again, we're seeing two very highly rated Korean solo laners. They're generally known for their mechanics. So I don't know if we can safely say without a larger sample size that, Loki can't do what we see a lot of these Korean mid laners do. On the other hand, we haven't seen it yet. So I want to see if they can, maybe trust him a little bit, put some trust in him, let him lock in the Sylas, maybe let him lock in the Akali, like put him on a carry role and just see what he can do with it. I think Aurora, if they let it through, is just such an absolutely broken champion. Like it allows them to do so much with her ability to team fight. If they make the team fights easy, like they just put a whole bunch of go buttons, right? Then it's fine. But you're right. If they try to draft Nidalee Renekton and then put him on a freaking Victor, and then we put Sven on Ezreal, like I'm gonna be a little annoyed because I feel like you guys are asking for them to play pixel perfect for the next 45 minutes. And I don't think it goes well. And I think the one thing that FlyQuest does really well is they drafted those team fighting strengths, right? They put one of their best mechanical players in Inspired on like Ivern. And they put Bwipo on these like an Urgot Olaf, right? Like these champions don't require hands really, but they do them so well. So it makes the team fighting very easy. And then they let their mechanical players like Masu just go to work. And I think it's really smart for them to draft like that. I really hope C9 just kind of doesn't out ego themselves and draft some simple, straightforward, like, hey, we want to push go, everyone engage on this person, right? Like, if they can isolate and kill Masu in some of these fights, if they can ban out some of his better champions, I think they have a good chance. But at the end of the day, it's like, the nice thing is it's best of 3. So if he has one pop-off game, fine, you draft around it, maybe isolate him the next time. But I expect this. I want to see them test their solo laners a little bit. Like, let these guys try to actually flex a little bit. Because especially right now, it's so early in the season, all of Loki and Thanatos' habits from boot camping in Korea haven't gone yet. And that is a real effect of when you boot camp in Korea for a while. You come back, your mechanics are stellar. And over the course of the year, playing on 50 ping in NA and playing against NA solo queue players, you start to see a drop off in the mechanics. It just, as the year goes on, I think that's just naturally what happens to everybody. But every single player I've seen, even like on my team, right? We had Shochi just come back from Korea. His mechanics were crisp, like right after Korea during the boot camp and all that. And then it's going to slowly fall off because those little things that you get used to timing, those little habits, they aren't really replicable here. So I would love to see like C9 put a little bit of volatility into the mix, force Fly out of their comfort zone. If we have to see an Ivern ban, I still don't know why this champ is being just let through like on ego. Like every time they let it through, it's just like, okay, yeah, actually that champion is ultra broken. Why are we doing this? I can see an angle again, like force them to have to team fight into positions they're not going to necessarily be as comfortable on, and then let your star players like maybe show up a little bit.
I will give you almost all of that in your defense for Cloud9, but I won't give you the fact that they're both their solo laners, just because I think Quad right now is performing at a incredible level. I don't think I can't sit here and say, yeah, I think Loki can get the better of Quad. If you're going to argue that they're going to go even, sure. But if you're going to argue that Loki is going to give it to Quad, I don't think that's going to happen. Could that happen to Bwipo? Sure. Like Bwipo is known to make these side laning plays where he calls them good deaths, and then he's like, "Oh no, my team's getting other stuff on the other side of the team." And sometimes it happens, and sometimes it doesn't. But like again, in general, Bwipo has been taken advantage of in a lot of different matchups, and on side lanes and whatnot. I don't see the same thing happening for Quad. And I think like you mentioned, you give Quad and Masu the mechanical, like, hey, you have to play the Kai'Sa, you have to play the Ashe, you have to play the Cassiopeia, you have to play the Azir. Like, give them those champions and let Bwipo play his Bwipo style. Put your probably best player on Ivern, put him on Sejuani, put him on whatever. And even if Cloud9 get a composition with Aurora, Cassante, like all the OPs, they get the Sejuani, they get the Ziggs, like they get whatever they wanted, they can't play the next game. So
yeah, no, I agree. I would like to see Cassio banned. I want at least game 1 for them to ban some of these comfort picks. I think one of the most dangerous things about playing against a team like FlyQuest series-wise is if you lose that first game. We talked about this last week. So if you lose that first game, you're in such a hole because they're kind of giving you a draft that you want game 1. I think that's going to be how they approach this. They're sort of letting a lot of champs. They were letting the Skarner through first pick, right? Mm-hmm. And they're just saying, pick whatever you want, go beat it, and now you're screwed. So I think game 1, just ban them off of their comfort champions. Make them play the actual stuff that you want them to play, right? Like, don't let Cassio go through. Don't let Ivern go through. I think Urgot is probably you can probably allow Urgot more than you can allow Olaf, like given how Whipple likes to play. But yeah, it'll be mostly, again, I am trying to argue the underdog. If I again were to put money on the game, I would probably not bet on C9 just given FlyQuest form. It doesn't look like they've fallen off from last year. It looks like they've stepped up. Like they're playing stuff they didn't play last year, and they're playing cleaner. Masu is on, like, that guy is phenomenal right now. It'd be really, really hard to say that he's gonna have a bad series, but then again, he is a young ADC. He's not a rookie anymore, but he's still very young. There's always gonna be some nerves, some jitters. So it seems like he's very level-headed though. All the stuff about him doing like the orange peel sniff, like he's approaching the game the right way. So it's probably less of an issue, but you never know. The only way I think C9 wins is if they create volatility and they put FlyQuest in positions that they're not comfortable with.
What if C9 are the ones that pick the Ivern Urgot comp, Cassio comp? Then what happens?
I don't. Have we seen Blabber on Ivern?
We can check that.
I don't know if I've seen Blabber play Ivern.
Blabber in a competitive game. Has he ever played Ivern? Let's find out. I think he has 4 games, 75% win rate. There you have it. Okay. Yeah.
So maybe. But I'm terrified of is that so last week I saw that they were banning Zyra every game, right? Mm-hmm. From Inspired, and my team had scrims this last week, and I saw Zyra let through, and I saw what Chad did with Zyra, and I'm like, oh, this is why this champion is banned. Like it's actually super broken. So I think Zyra jungle is maybe a fear as well. I like if they the problem is Inspired doesn't have to play any of these things either. Like he's been relegating himself to these supportive roles, and it's like if you give him a hard carry like Lilia, Zyra, like he's gonna also be able to pop off on those. So I'm like, it's just one of those teams where there's so many problems you have to deal with in order to beat FlyQuest that I don't know if any team realistically is ever going to be favored against them. But I think of all the teams, it's probably C9 TL that have a chance, and they just have to do it by playing to their own strengths. And as of right now, we're still not entirely clear what those strengths are. Right, like early game, it's just there's not enough sample size yet. So I'm personally, I've always been a big supporter of the way that C9 operates and all that. I think they can make the team very, very good. It's just right now you're talking about trying to make the team good in such a short amount of time against possibly the best team NA has put together in a very long time, coming off strong international performances, and they kept the whole team together. Like this is sort of uncharted territory for NA.
Yeah, I will say you got the harder one to pick the upset. I obviously got the easier one with 100 Thieves upsetting Team Liquid. I think a lot of people will look at what 100 Thieves will look at Team Liquid and say, they choked at Worlds. That's a common thing that I've been hearing. Oh, they choked at Worlds and they were really good back in summer, and they're back at that level. But we did see flaws. And what was the major flaw that Spawn came after an AMA and was like, oh, I'm really proud of how Umti was playing and didn't let those early deaths or misplays kind of get to him. And sometimes you need, he's always making excuses for his player as a head coach. Is like, oh, we were just using him as engage. He did the same thing for Impact at Worlds. He was like, Impact is not playing poorly. We're putting him in bad positions because we want advantages on the other side. And then I asked Impact about it. And he's like, yeah, I've never played worse in my life. I'm like, okay, it's your job as a coach.
He's actually being one of those coaches. He's taking the heat.
I'll give him that. But again, what we saw from Umti is it's not going to cut it against someone like your mid jungle is Quid River. This is a very powerful mid jungle. One of the reasons why they actually made it to Worlds, one of the reasons why Quid actually won MVP. Sniper is going to do his things. Sniper is an X factor that you can sometimes rely on and sometimes you can't. I think they upgraded with FBI. I think FBI brings a lot of that veteranship and the upset potential. If you remember in 2023, it was the change of bringing in FBI to NRG that led them to actually make it to Worlds, because the year before they didn't. In spring, they got knocked out. In summer was when they actually made that run. And so I think putting everything together, you have a very volatile, team that really wants to go in and fight, and you have a jungler who might not be the best when it comes to, hey, go in and fight. And I think that's a weak point that I think 100 Thieves, especially Golden Glue, who's someone that I think does a very good job at setting up his team to play the things that they have practiced. I think he's going to identify that. I think he's going to give them very good drafts where you can get jungle prio, and you're going to make not Wukong. He was playing Wukong. You're going to make Umti's life difficult. And when Umti is struggling, we've seen Team Liquid struggle.
Sure.
All right, you can tell me why I'm wrong.
I mean, no, that's all fair. We're talking about Team Liquid. Like, this is, again, the consensus number 1, number 2 team, depending on who you ask in the league right now. I would say that their performance last week was not as dominant as people expected, but they were still solid. 100 Thieves, on the other hand, last week looked shakier than I wanted to see. Like, there were some hiccups in either play calling or mid-game decision making. They weren't laning as clean as you would expect. Like Sniper, the game 1 really, really kind of ran it down a bit. On the upside, he kind of mentally recovered and was able to finish out strong. But these are mistakes you can't make against a team like Team Liquid. And no matter if they're maybe coming off of a little bit of off-season hangover, whatever, like these guys, their macro decision making still looks good. They still have a lot of what made them really good last year in terms of mid-game, objective trading, all that stuff. That hasn't gone away. And they are still probably one of the best teams at lane swapping. So if they decide, hey, we want to create volatility, we want to try to lane swap, Team Liquid could probably answer that better than most other teams in the league. There's not going to be a lot of surprises for them from 100 Thieves. So I will say 100 Thieves is one of the best teams at creating that volatility, but TL is also so consistently just able to navigate some of those things. Sort of like what you were mentioning earlier about FlyQuest being able to win from low gold situations or behind. TL was doing that all year last year too. It's the same group of players. Mentally, I think they are one of the toughest, most resilient teams. And we talked last week, we want to see if Impact is nervous. I don't think he looked nervous. Like, he came in and just kind of smashed top lane. Like, he looked back in form. I think they're totally fine. Any initial hiccups or whatever, I attribute to it being early in the week, right? Or earlier in the season. So I can't see TL having a big enough mental hiccup. I still think that they're in prove it mode. They are still looking forward at the FlyQuest series eventually, but they have to prove it week to week. And I think right now 100 Thieves is probably the consensus number 4 team in the league. This is a good chance to show that. Take someone else out who is a potential playoffs contender and show that you want to go up against the better teams in the league. So Spawn, like you mentioned, is a great coach. I think he's not letting his team kind of overlook this week. It's going to be built up as sort of, this is an important win for us. We can't just let this one kind of go under the radar. I'm sure they're prepping very hard. The work ethic is never an issue with this team. So, I don't see him coming in unprepared. And when it comes down to it, series always tends to favor the better team. And if it goes to 3, then I think it's for sure going to be TL if they don't sweep in 2.
Well, I'll actually counter that with you saying that if it goes to 3, it'll be Team Liquid. I actually think the other way around. Team Liquid, APA said this on the AMA before the start of the season. It's like, one of the things we really focused on is we have a champion pool of like 3 to 4 champs or however many, and we stick to them. And we're playing fearless. And guess what? You win on one composition, all of a sudden, 2 champions in that role are no longer there. You get into game 3. I know it's not full, like game 5 or anything, so you're not going to have 10 players, but you have 10 champions banned on you. But you have players who are very comfortable on specific picks that now have to expand their champion pools. And if we know anything about 100 Thieves, is that probably is not an issue to them, but I think it's an issue for Team Liquid. So I think if it goes to 3 and they can target ban someone, they can actually do quite a lot of damage.
Yeah, I hope that they are able to take advantage of the fact that some of their champs are also champions that don't normally get banned, right? Like take full advantage of that. So if they try to target ban Asol, target ban Ziggs every game, like that's fine. I think as a growing point long term, we have to see APA play other meta champions, and I think he can do it, right? Corki looked good. It looks like Azir is very high prio right now, so if they game 1, game 2 can get through the meta part of the phase, right, part of the banning phase, and it gets to game 3, they have to let Asol or Ziggs through. I just don't see how he doesn't lose on these champions. Like he's basic. I think overall he's like 80 something % win rate on both these champions.
Can you play Asol in this current meta? I think you can play Ziggs. I don't know about Asol.
Yeah, it's hard to say because I think the meta is always skewed when it comes to talking about AP as Asol. Like he's played it in horrible positions before, and people are like, "There's no way this guy can play this champion." And it's like he still somehow figures out how to get to 200 stacks and just murder people.
It's like you can't play the Asol, but he can.
Yeah, yeah. It's that one trick scenario thing, right? Like you see people like in high challenger when they play their one tricks, right? Like any of these high level challenger one tricks who are consistently top 100 on the ladder, it doesn't matter the matchup. It doesn't matter the team comp even. They will figure out a way to make this champion work and sort of do what they need to do to win games. I mean, and it's actually really impressive. So I think Asol is a champion that is sort of meta proof in the fact that at some point in the game, he will take over the game. So whether or not they need to figure out like where to put him in lane assignments, or if they need to figure out how to get him objectives so he can get more stacks, so he can get kills early, if they have to funnel him a bit, kind of like you would with an AD carry, like maybe that's what they do. But I just don't see a world in which he's going to pick Asol and be completely shut out of the game. We've never seen it in competitive. And I think everyone knows that. And everyone's got like, oh yeah, Asol's unplayable because we can pick these champs into it. Nobody's ever showed that with him though. They've never been able to just completely take him out of the game on these champions. I think Ziggs is way worse, honestly. How do you even punish Ziggs?
Yeah, I know this is called disputing everything, but this was a hard one to dispute. I know it was the easy one, but this
I think it'll be good. You know, I am actually. I'll say this: regardless of who wins either of these series, I'm very excited because next week's games look like a banger. Like these are good matchups now. All right, this week's was interesting for different reasons. I think next week's, I really wanted to see Fly play either TLC9, right? Like I really wanted to see 100 Thieves play someone of importance. Like this is actually a week that starts to make a lot of, I guess, impact in terms of how we view all these teams long term over the next 6 months. You know?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna see 3 games, right? Like 3 matchups. Yeah. We're gonna see the winner of 100 TL and the other matchup. They're gonna play a best of 1, which I would have loved if it was a best of 3, but it is what it is. Asol is more broken. Interesting. So maybe APA can play the Asol.
Yeah, I expect them to draft around it too, but yeah.
Honestly, I think Golden Glue does a great job at like figuring out specific drafts for his players. His players just need to play like MVP level Quid, you know, and just pray. But yeah, I ran out of juice a long time ago, I think, with that argument.
I'm a big Golden Glue fan. I think the hard part for him, he's given a lot of very young players, right? He's given a lot of people who have high upside to get that performance out of them for every single pick that he knows is good. I think he's one of those coaches that likes to be like, oh, let's try this because the comp makes sense. This is a really good pick. He likes to theory craft a lot. You don't know if your player can actually play that champion to the level it needs to be played in order to make that work. And if they're playing slightly below that, now suddenly doesn't work, right? Like you pick someone a winning lane because you're like, oh, this is a good matchup, but they haven't played more than 20 games on the champion. It gets a little tough. So we'll see what they do. You know, I'd still want to see Sniper given some trust and faith, pop off on some of his champions, but Sniper is one of those players now too, where I'm starting to question, like, can he effectively play tanks? Can he really be weak sided? It's kind of hard because if you can't, then your playstyle becomes very one-dimensional, and it's very easy for TL to be like, okay, let's just focus resources top.
Lane swap,
like, don't let him play the game. Like,
counter argument, Golden Glue let River play Shaco one game. I don't know what that's a counter argument too, but he did. He let him play Shaco. They won the game with Shaco Veigar, I'm pretty sure.
He has faith in his players, right? Like if the angle is good, but that being said, unless if I was a coach, right, and my players like I want to play Shaco, like let me see your OPGG and your win rate on this champion. If it's not like if you haven't played at least 50 games on it over the course of your career, like I just don't trust you to play it. You know, it's just tough because I know a lot of times players will have certain champs that they just want to play. Like oh, I really like this. For example, like on my team, like Mixture really likes playing Skarner support, and he does insane things with it. It's actually very, very broken looking in his hands.
Skarner support?
I don't. There's got to be a reason why more pros aren't playing it though, because it's got to be like either too resource intensive. I don't know what it is, but he played it a bunch of times and it looks utterly broken. But you know, there's stuff like that where it's like, okay, well, if it's his pick and he's doing well, like let him do it. But I think tier 1, the stakes are so much higher, but with Fearless, maybe they allow for some of that stuff. I'd like to see more of that. There's been a lot of criticism of Fearless in general that it's not actually allowing for enough variety, and it's kind of just a more expanded version of Best of 1, where you're still just going to see, instead of the same 20 champs, you're going to see the same 40 champs over and over.
So you did say something about the format and how the stakes are a lot higher with this format. And so that leads me to my next question. This format where you have basically Worlds play-ins for your first split, where now we have 2 teams that are going to be off for more than 2 months. And then next week, we're going to have another 2 teams that are going to be off for 2 months. Right? There's been a lot of talk online about whether it's good or not. There's been a lot of criticism towards Riot because Riot said, hey, we're going to do, single round robin, double round robin, best of 1 instead of best of 3 because we want these teams to have more opportunities to play during the week. And then they go off and they literally give them 2 teams only the opportunity to play 2 best of 3s in an entire split. And I know it's a faster split and whatnot. So I want to give you the floor. What do you think overall this format is good or bad? If you had to pick one.
I don't like it. It feels disjointed. It feels like they're not sure what is the best format, so they're running all 3 formats in 1 year. Right, between this 1, 2, and 3 splits. I've been against the 3 split system since they announced it last year. We saw what happened with LEC, and I think that LTA has done a better job of finding ways to make all the splits feel a little bit different and still feel meaningful, which is something LEC failed to do. So I think that's one positive, but at the same time, I just don't understand why they are experimenting with BO1s, BO3s, and then like later on back to it's back to BO1 but not Fearless. Like if they want to experiment, do it year to year. Everyone seems to be a fan of the Fearless from the fan perspective, right? The viewer perspective. I think a lot of the negative feelings about Fearless are coming from the coaching staff and coming from analysts and coming from people who actually are on the competitive side who say that, well, this doesn't really change anything. It doesn't actually improve anything. And I've seen some of the arguments online that, it lowers overall game quality because we're forcing people to play champs they're not as good on. I'm like, well, that's not actually a good argument. I don't care about game quality right now. Is this long-term over the next few years going to make players diversify their champ pools? Absolutely it will. So long-term, it's a good thing. They should hopefully learn more of these champions, right? They should be looking for pocket picks that they can pull out in really in important situations. But I don't think that we need to think about game quality. Like even if we kept it the normal format, not Fearless, is LTA going to achieve Korea levels of macro, micro, and all that just because we've switched to best of 3s? No, it doesn't help us at all, actually. So I just don't really understand the arguments against Fearless. I wish they would just adopt it long term and just keep the format consistent. I really like the BO3s. I'm a big fan of it. I think if you watch a lot of Valorant, the way that their series go, it's way more interactive. It's way more intense because teams can come back from a bad mistake. They choked a map, whatever, they lost. Hey, you get 2 more tries. So I just think that it removes some of the volatility. I think it does make teams better because the better teams tend to win in a series than, the fluky outliers. Like we always saw that in the past too in the BO1s where the bottom place team would knock out the top seed because it was week 9 and they just kind of have to eventually lose the game if they don't put it all together. So I just think it removes some of the volatility in terms of placements. I think when we get to the finals in each of the splits with BF3s, you're going to be pretty confident that these are the best 3-4 teams. Whereas before it was, very fluky sometimes with what teams would get into playoffs. So I don't like the current format. I hope they next year just announce if they have to do the 3 split thing. I get it. They want another international. Just make all of them best of 3s. Figure out a different day to put games. Like I know they have to organize around Valorant, but like it just doesn't make sense that it feels like they're going from a lot of games played, but not so many in the series, down to more in the series, but less games played. It's very awkward feeling. And I can't imagine how that affects practice, right? Like, how do you prepare for these different types of formats?
I think this is one of the few times where on this show we genuinely have different agreement, and we're not just devil's advocate because it's the show.
Yeah.
I actually completely disagree. One, I don't want to see Fearless all the time. I want Fearless. I don't know if you play chess, but this is the example I give. There's Chess 960, or freestyle chess as it's being called nowadays, where you have all the pieces in like random spots. They're still in the starting rows, but they just completely random position. So you can't really prepare for it. You can't. There aren't like openings. You have to actually use your brain. You can't be a computer for the first 30 moves. And it's fun. It's really cool. It's a different play style, and it's cool to see players do it. But is it something that I want to see long term? No, because again, I think that Hikaru is one of the best players, the King's, Indian defense. And when he plays that, he gets really good positions. I don't want to see a game where he can't use his best strategies more than once, right? So I would very much prefer to see, the example people give all the time is like, do you not want to see more bin jacks? Like, you want to see it once? Do you not want, when FlyQuest is pushing Gen G with the Nunu pick, with the Seraphine mid, Gen G have to ban it, right? But if that's not the case, all of a sudden you're asking FlyQuest to prepare 5 off net, like they don't have enough firepower. And so it's like, hey, they prepared this really cool strategy and they can only use it once, kind of leaves a sour taste in your mouth. So in terms of like having it all the time, I think for a short split, this is why I like the format. I think having a very short split that starts at the beginning of the year, kind of like a kickoff event, like lock-in event that we had in previous. I know it's a little bit longer than lock-in, obviously, because it leads into international. But I think having an event where you're kind of saying, hey, welcome back to League of Legends for the year 2025. Welcome back year 2026. I think it's a great idea. I think they could definitely polish it up. I think the fact that we have to play in the closet always sucks. Why did we start past everybody else? Why was the leading content really like late towards the end of the split? Why did we have we didn't know the matchups until a week before the games on the 18th. LEC were already playing games. Like, there are a lot of issues with the delivery, and I think they can definitely polish those up. But I have no problem with the format. The fact that we're going to the South brings a lot of hype. I think that the idea of having like 2 different splits, where the first split, very quick, you're having this like competition with the South just to get everything to start off with a bang kind of thing, I think is a great idea. I don't mind at all. Even if Shopify lost today, I would not say, man, this format sucks. I only get to see my team play 2 best of 3s. I would have said, okay, now give me some content, because you better not be, vacationing for 2 months. This is your time to prove yourself. This is your time where you fly to Brazil. We talked about this earlier. If Shopify lose, I expect them to fly to Brazil either way and to go and bootcamp there and play against the best NA teams. I don't expect them to go to Korea, because I don't think teams are really going to bootcamp for this event. But at the very least, you need to be practicing. You can't not practice, right? If you're going to stream scrims, that would be a great time when you're eliminated and there's only,
even if they don't go to Brazil, right? If all the teams that are eliminated just are here and they just run like weekly like scrim sessions and stream them, I think that'd be great content and it'd be entertaining. It's like the in-houses, right? Like whatever happened to what was that called? The
Champs-Q?
Champs-Q, yeah. Whatever happened to that? Like, like they were streaming all those too, and it was fun. They just gotta do stuff like that. They could put together their own in-houses again, like CoreJJ's in-houses, right? And just like stream games every night, mix teams up, like, and it'd be all pros. It's like, okay, we're gonna take every night. It's like you get randomized teams of all the teams that have been eliminated, and they just run games all night. Like that'd be a banger. It'd be fun. But I definitely want to see something of that, right? Like, because if you're gonna keep the format this short, your team only played 2 best of 3s. You have to fill the other spot. I'm going to be willing to actually change my stance on this and agree with you that Fearless is not the best option when it comes to late season, mainly because Worlds is not changing. You're not changing Worlds format. So if you're not going to change Worlds format, the last split in the season cannot be Fearless. Because you need to have that time to prep for the format you're actually going to play, which is not Fearless. And so I do agree that it's sort of detrimental if you're playing BO3s that are Fearless, and then you have to go play in a full tournament that's not Fearless. You're sort of like, it becomes very difficult to do that because now you can't use some of this. I mean, from the macro strategy side, you can't draft the way you've been drafting. You can't ban the way you've been banning. So it becomes very different, and it becomes very hard for teams to adapt, I think. So I do agree that Fearless should not be the only format. I do like that it's the early format because it does sort of also incentivize players and teams to try stuff they haven't tried, because they have to. But there has to be some sort of middle ground, right? I would like to see at some point Riot just come out with like 10 bans. At some point, the champ pool is so large that 5 bans may not even be enough. 5 to 7 bans, something like that. They need to increase the number of bans to increase the variability of champ drafts selected. Like, I don't know how 5 suddenly became the magic like limit of, if they come up with 20 more champions, how can you keep it at 5?
I think the idea was, hey, we're going to introduce Fearless. This is going to solve the problem. At least that's what Freak said when they were presenting all these different options of, hey, how can we increase diversity? One of the big things is like increase the number of bans. And one of the things was like, hey, why don't we just ban the highest percentage like a presence every 2 weeks of champions? Yeah. So if everybody's playing Azir, guess what? Next week, you can't play Azir. So now you have to go to the next tier. But then they felt that eventually they led to Fearless. In terms of the second split, the best of ones, I completely agree with you. Like I can't even sit here in good faith and say, oh, I love best of ones. Like we had best of threes last split. Dude, the amount of people that are going to be completely and entirely shocked going into next split, where we had all these like really cool best of 3 moments, and it was Fearless, and then they're going to go and it's going to be like this long, grueling best of 1. Like you're going to see 8 games 4 every single day. So 8 games a week. It is going to be like different matchups. It's going to leave a sour taste in your mouth when you see the FlyQuest versus Team Liquid game, and one team wins 1 game. It's like, what? Come on! I wanted to see the adaptation, like you said, like exactly in Valorant. Like I'm not even going to try to argue that.
Even you talking about it right now, I'm thinking back. This is just how it was last year, right? Like it was so soon, but like, it feels bad. Like you think about like, oh yeah, the whole Saturday I'd watch like 2 matches I want to see. One I was like, it's whatever, maybe stay for half of it. Like, and then the whole day's over. And then the next day you see like 3 different matches, and you're like, okay, now this is over. And then you're done. Like, and then you wait till the next week. It feels like a major step back in terms of entertainment value and like what we used to look forward to and stuff. I think we always, even during best of ones, everyone was talking about it. They wanted best of 3s. And I understood that before it made sense to do best of ones because there were 10 teams in the league. You couldn't realistically schedule just that many games. And then it went to 8, and we're like, well, maybe. Now then it went to 6, and like, how can you guys not schedule 3 best of 3s in a week? Like,
So even if it's single round robin, like I'll take that. I thought that was more entertaining than the alternative, and I think most people did agree. But again, the entire argument that teams want more screen time, guess what? Just stream your screen. Just do something. Do something else. It doesn't have to be a professional game.
I mean, I would even take the NACL version with like the best of 2s. Right? Like a best of 2, so it's either a win or a tie. That's actually solid because it still diversifies the rankings. It still adds some volatility to rankings, and it makes it so you can actually see people try things. Because if it's not Fearless, at least in a best of 2, they can change their draft strategy a little bit. They can tweak things. They can maybe, hey, we just played that bad. Let's just try it again. Like there's so many more things that occur in learning and what you can show on stage when you have a best of 2 even versus a best of 1. Sometimes a best of 1 is like, you did everything right that week. You guys prepped super hard. One player, something choked in a critical moment. Now you lose the game. That's it. Like that, your whole week worth of prep is just kind of blown. It feels really bad.
Both series today were reverse sweeps. Shopify, if it was a best of 1, we would be completely eliminated. Dig would have been eliminated.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I mean. Like series favor the teams that should win. It's much harder to argue that you should have won when you lost 2 of the games. Like you can't even make that argument, So I think it's much more fair. It's much more balanced, and it actually makes it so that you're sort of respecting the team's time more in the entire week of prep. It feels so bad to grind all week and you lose it in one 2-minute interval of like, oh, something went bad and we unluckily got this stolen. Now we just lose everything this week. Like,
yeah,
I really hate that. So
I agree.
yeah.
As someone who benefits from best of ones, like in the first split, when I started doing my interviews, I would have way more. I would have like double the amount of interviews. Why? Because both teams were taking, like, every single team was taking interviews Saturday and Sunday. Now in best of 3, that doesn't work. The team is only taking interviews the day that they're playing, and so I get way less interviews in a best of 3. But the entertainment value to me makes more sense. But going into the last split, honestly, the format is so unclear. I think I have a pretty good grasp on it, but I think it's so unclear. I have so many questions that I can't even judge whether I like the format or not. Because it's like, do I like the idea of the bottom teams picking the top teams? Yes. Do I understand how that works when you have 2 teams that are 0-2, but you can't have a repeat matchup, but another team is 1-1, the other team, but like, what about your seeding? Yeah. Like, it just gets so confusing, and there's so much technicality that I don't exactly understand.
I just don't. I'm not. I guess I'm not smart enough to comprehend whether or not there could be a potential break in that system. Like, is there a scenario that would potentially break the system where they would have to just pick 2 teams to play? Like,
eventually, you'll have only one.
Yeah, all
one team
of those
to pick.
all those qualifiers you just listed, like, it creates really weird scenarios. And I like the idea behind it, but I agree. It almost feels like they should have done that early and then switched it, because that feels less competitive, right? You're calling your shot. That feels almost like, okay, I don't know. It just feels like it's less formal than, especially for a summer split, right? This is your Worlds qualification. It should be very organized in terms of, okay, you guys win, you move on, you do this, right? Like, and you get into Worlds. But for them to do it like, oh, you can call out which teams you want to play. Is there a strategy to when you call teams out? If one of the top teams just kind of lost that week before, they're slumping, now you're going to call them. Like, it's very weird.
I mean, that's the idea. It's like, okay, let hypothetically speaking, C9 beat FlyQuest, and now, it's Shopify's third. We're going to pick C9 because we think that it was a fluke, right? And then instead of Team Liquid. So that's probably what's going to happen. Like, let's say you have a matchup between like Dignitas and DSG, right? Regardless of who wins, you bet the next team, the team that has the opportunity to pick first, is going to pick the winner of that matchup, right? Yeah. So it's like,
or you pick the loser and you just run the same comp they did, or you use the same strategy.
Well, you can't pick the loser. It's the loser that picks the winner.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it's the loser that picks the winner. Yeah. It only flips towards the end, so that way it doesn't make it it doesn't make it so that it's actually beneficial to you if you lose, because then you get to pick your matchup.
Right.
So it basically prevents sandbagging.
It is interesting. It's an interesting format. We'll see how it goes. I can see it kind of causing some chaos, which I guess is what they want. But the other point too, I was going to say about best of ones, and this is something I know for sure in seeing how a lot of teams operate behind the scenes, is that when you have 2 teams to prep for in 1 week, you really prep 1.5 teams. They tend to overlook one of the. You always pick the harder team to really prep for, and the other one, all right, let's just like go through the VODs. Let's do a little bit of prep work for them. And that's why you see a lot of those upsets, is like, like when what was it? CLG would always beat C9, right? Guaranteed every single week though, C9 was looking at TL. They were looking at, like EG, FlyQuest. They were looking ahead and being like, okay, well, we have to prep for CLG as well. But it becomes very, very hard to actually fully prep for both. So you actually inadvertently cause a drop off, and what people are arguing about Fearless is actually absolutely true when you have to prep for 2 different teams in 1 week. You cause a drop off in your player and your team's ability to prepare for that team, so they just kind of run whatever and hope they kind of just beat them by being better.
So my last topic, I'm pretty much going to take the lead on this one. You had mentioned that you thought that 100 Thieves is the clear 4th best team. I'm going to argue the Shopify are going to 2-0 100 Thieves. Assuming my upset doesn't happen and, we don't have to play against Team Liquid. I hope we don't have to play against Team Liquid. I think it'll be a much harder match. So yeah, I'm going to argue exactly why we're going to beat 100 Thieves. I think our mid laner is looking good. Our jungler is looking good. I think our top laner has never had a problem with playing against Sniper. I think Sniper's playstyle benefits him when he's playing against people who don't necessarily respect the fact that he knows his matchups. And I think Fudge is one of those people who will not let that happen. And we saw what happened every single time Fudge played against Sniper. He beat him down. I think our bottom lane is not afraid of Ayla. I'm sorry, sure, we don't have the best bottom lane. Like, I don't think Bvoy and Zeyzal are playing the best, but it's Ayla. Like, I will never, in good faith, say, hey, I think Ayla's gonna win this matchup.
You're the biggest Ayla dissident.
I've just seen him like toss like who he played so poorly on the Luna, missed every ultimate, and he still played a better Leona game than Ayla. Like, I don't know how.
I do want to call out one thing he said, and I argued with this preseason. How are you feeling about Palafox now? You think you're more confident? I said I have faith in Palafox, but are you a little bit out of your, like, I don't know why we brought this guy in train? Or
yeah, so for the sake of this argument, yeah, I completely understand why they brought him in, but I think after talking to Revan, he was like, we really want a playmaker mid lane, and we kind of saw him like flashing forward on the Azir, like actually making plays that you wouldn't really expect a regular mid laner would go for, and like, sure, we got rewarded that he lived, and it could have been very disastrous. We could have lost 2-0 if that, like, he didn't live on 2 HP and then we got Atakan. Like, yes, it could have been really bad, but again, he went for it. It worked. And so, like, him flashing and killing, their bottom lane with the Yone, like, he was definitely a playmaker. He was 1v2ing multiple times with the Atakan, without the Atakan. So I think that he definitely does have 2023 Palafox inside of him. And I think he's slowly unleashing himself. I think putting him on the Victor, putting him on champions where he doesn't necessarily have the agency to make things happen by himself doesn't make any sense to me, because Revan said the reason we brought this player in over Insanity, who can play the Victor, is that he's a playmaker, and guess what? Insanity isn't a playmaker. So I want to see him do more things on the Azir. I want to see him play more of these champions that can be the ones to start off a fight and to make things happen. I want to see the Neeko. I want to see, apparently ASOL is like broken right now. Play the ASOL, right? I see you playing like all these playmaking champions in solo queue. I want you to actually like bring them in. I want to see his Aurora. His Aurora looks really clean. I've watched him like on a stream. He plays a really good Aurora. We had the opportunity to pick it. We didn't. So I want to see him play these more playmaking champions. And I think that I'm not worried at all about their bottom lane, again, because they have Ayla. And I think if Palafox and Contracts are playing the way that they do, I'm not worried about top lane. I think top lane, we have the clear advantage. I think anyone arguing against that just hasn't seen that matchup happen like 6 different times last year. And Palafox playing like Palafox, I think we take it 2-0 easy. All right, now tell me why I'm wrong.
This is actually a hard one, because I really believe in 100 Thieves, but I also really believe in Shopify's arc. Preseason I was saying I think that Shopify actually put together a very strong team. They have a very veteran top side. Bvoy doesn't have to hard carry games. He just has to do his job somewhat. And I've been a big Fudge believer for a long time, because I know he's got the ceiling. What remains to be seen is how long will he keep going without kind of not trying as hard anymore. And part of me wants to think that, hey, maybe him getting cut from C9 was the wake-up call he needed. So, it's always going to be tough with him, because I know he could play at a very, very high level, but we haven't seen him play at that form since he was a rookie. And maybe the year after. Like, his first 2 seasons, he was probably the best top laner in LCS. And then kind of went on a decline since then. And I just haven't seen him really, I guess, show that level yet again. But I agree that Sniper, unless Sniper can pull out some other picks, like, he needs to show some competency on tanks. He needs to show ability to get weak sided and not hard lose the lane. It is hard to say, but I will say I think River and Wid, I always have to remember, they form such a strong mid jungle duo that it's gonna be tough. Contracts is always kind of one of my favorite junglers, but at the same time, he kind of looked a little rough today. There were definitely some moments where I was a little bit like, the Moo a little bit sus, kind of got gapped. That's not against like one of the, Shaden's very good, but Shaden was not a high level tier 1 jungler the one time he played in LCS either. This is, a tier 2 jungler coming into tier 1, trying to show, what he can do against a very veteran jungler. And he kind of showed him up a few times. So I don't know if we can really use today's games as like a great comparison for 100 Thieves. If 100 Thieves keeps leveling up the way they should, and I do trust Golden Glue to do that, they might their rate of improvement might exceed that of Shopify's right now. I think on paper, Shopify is probably the better team playing. If they were to play this week, I wouldn't have a ton of faith. but it remains to be seen, like, by next week, who can actually improve faster.
They just have to get crushed by Team Liquid so bad that they tilt and they're like, oh, all our prio is out the window.
That is a major. Okay, that could go one of two ways though, because knowing 100 Thieves, when their backs are to the wall, they actually do really, really well.
Did you see them at Worlds?
But you're comparing that to, like, I think that was a tier gap issue. Like, I mean,
Quid went 0-10 against Lion, the LLA team. We've never once lost to an LLA team. Go on.
Yeah, that was kind of a disaster. I mean, I can't even begin to be an apologist for that World's performance from them. Like, I think the volatility is very, very high with that team, and that's just the kind of the nature of the roster they built. I agree. If you were to pick anyone on that team to be like, this is going to be my anchor, I'm going to build around this player, I don't know who that is on that team, except now FBI. I can say FBI is a solid component for them because he's very stable. You're not really ever going to see FBI just like go 1-10. He's always going to kind of keep up in farm. He's always going to play pretty safe. He's not going to have the upside that you see with like the berserkers or, like, the super flashy ADCs, but he very rarely just hard loses. So I think having that gave them a little bit of stability in bot lane, which in some lane that they needed, because Sniper isn't that guy. And I don't really trust mid lane jungle to hard win every time. They're very kind of coin flippy too. So that's why it's really hard for me ever to predict how 100 Thieves is going to do. They just feel like a team where you have so much upside, but you have so much downside, and you just flip it over and over throughout the game, like whether or not these plays are going to go really well. And they seem to embrace that, like they want to fight every objective. They want to steal every objective if they can't, right? They flip everything. I would say that that's one of their strengths and one of their downsides, because they've successfully done it against some very good teams. And then sometimes when you watch a Baron setup from TL or FlyQuest, like 100 Thieves, like they will get an advantage and they will try to set it up, and they just don't, right? They just don't have vision in the right place. They just kind of like start hitting, and then they just coin flip a fight and hope they win a smite fight. It's very chaotic. So yeah, I don't know. I'd say on paper, Shopify should just be a better team, but at the same time, like if 100 Thieves levels up and they just play to their peak, then they might just be better overall just because of the ceiling that they all have. Like we've seen River just absolutely just take over games, right? You let J4 through, and he just 1v9s. It's crazy. So I don't know. It's hard to say that okay, let's put it, since we have to debate something, I don't think they will 2-0. I don't think Shopify 2-0s. I think 100 Thieves takes at least one game.
Okay, you're still on the Shopify win hype train. I did my job.
I'm not David. I'm not gonna sit here and try to argue 100 Thieves is winning the split. I think that'd be a huge upset. I on paper, again, preseason, I've ranked 100 Thieves slightly above Shopify, but I said Shopify has higher room to improve if these players live up to their potential. It's just we haven't seen Palafox, we haven't seen Fudge, we haven't seen well, I guess at the time I didn't know who their support was, but like we haven't Zeyzal, like we haven't seen these players play at their ceilings in years, a couple of years at least, right? So it was hard to say that they're going to come in and immediately dominate. Like if Spica comes back next season, I'm not going to say he's going to be the best jungler in the league.
Yeah.
It's so retroactive looking, like it's hard to say that. So that's the only reason I rank them below 100 Thieves.
That's fair. I'll give props to Spica, not Spica, to Zeyzal. He doesn't want to be in LA. Like Revan talked about this publicly. He said, there's no problem in sharing this, but the reason we actually moved on from Zeyzal to begin with was that he felt homesick. He wanted to leave. He didn't want to stay in LA. Sure. And the fact that, when we needed a sub, he, no question asked, came and is playing for us, and he's actively, helping the team improve. Nothing but respect towards the guy. Very, very professional. And I'm glad that we had someone and didn't have to basically find, an academy player who might not be ready and then destroy his career because all of a sudden he's playing against Masu and, Busio, and he's like, what the hell?
And he got plugged in, and it's a temporary plug-in. Yeah. Like it feels bad. Yeah. No, Zeyzal I've worked with Zeyzal a lot actually on C9 and EG, and he is one of the most professional players, one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. I'm not surprised at all actually hearing that. Like he really is one of those people that puts himself out there on the team. I've heard from other players that they actually get annoyed at him in solo queue because he will be the one constantly typing like, "Hey guys, we can win this. We can win this."
Positive
They're like,
toxicity is what
dude, we're down like 26 kills. Like, let me out. He's just always like, "We can win. We can win."
Yeah, I used
But
to.
yeah.
Go ahead.
He's very mentally like stable. He's a really good role model for younger players. I think he takes a lot of pride in like being a positive influence on the team. So I'm not surprised at all that he's doing what it takes to like help these guys do the best that they can while he's with them.
I used to play Dota. I didn't play Dota. I would play Dota with some of my friends. One friend in particular, like we could be down 10 kills or whatever. We're like, oh, it's okay. I think the way to win is this. He's like, dude, you were so toxic. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, your positivity is just so toxic. We're gonna lose. Just move on. Like, why are you trying to win a game where like everybody's trolling? And I was like, because the game is winnable. You think they don't make mistakes? You think this is like Team Faker or something? I think at that time EG had just won Worlds or something. I was like, what, you think they're EG or something? No, it's TL. TL had just won TI.
Yeah, I mean, League is like that though. I'll admit I mental boom for sure earlier than I should a lot of games, but I can also understand in high elo why people feel that way because like the windows to come back are so much smaller in high rank because people punish so much harder. Like you're not gonna hope they screw up like a Baron flip or there's not gonna do that. But yeah, I get it. I'm really happy to hear that he's at least being taken care of and hopefully goes home if that's what he wants to do and enjoys his time. I know he came out here when he was very young. Like he skipped the end of high school and everything, moved out here, and he's first time living on his own and all that. So it'd be really tough to do that as an 18-year-old. When he first started on C9.
Last thing I want to talk about is I want to shout out Karen Moser. I think she had my favorite comment of today. I wonder how Spawn should coach immortal Valorant players against gold. In regards to 100 Thieves versus Team Liquid.
Yeah.
I was savage.
Okay, well, let's theory craft this. If you were to coach a team that is better than the other team, what do you do? Like as a coach,
tell them not to turn their monitors off.
Well, I mean, yeah, but like what would you draft all that? Like, are you gonna try to pull out stuff to experiment with in terms of like, oh, look, we might win anyway. Why don't we try some weird stuff? Why don't we not show everything that we've prepped for playoffs, stuff like that?
I think that's an anti-Team Liquid special. I think with Team Liquid, they're always going to play the game that they practiced, and they're going to try to perfect and get like 1,000 reps on the same thing. If this was FlyQuest, sure, maybe they don't play the Nunu that they were hiding. Maybe they play like a Nocturne or Orianna composition and like try to maybe bait Team Liquid, who they're expecting to play against, to ban it out because it worked or something like that. But I think when it comes to Team Liquid, you just play standard. You play what you already practiced. You play what you've shown, and you basically put the onus on 100 Thieves. Show us what you got, because if you don't match up to us, then we're just going to win because we have better macro, we have better individual players, and we have better like game sense and team fighting.
Yeah, that's fair. I agree. I think if I was, you're right. Actually, this is specifically to Team Liquid. Play to their strengths. Like if they don't respect the APA bans that you have to ban, just pull out the A Soul. And everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, it's so expected on that," but actually, it doesn't show anything. Then everyone knew
exactly if it's expected.
Right? Don't show anything. Like if they let you do it, just do it, and then just rely on your players to kind of just carry the game with hands. Like there's better players, so limit the volatility. I think would be a big thing against that team. Like they just have to make sure that they have stable lanes. They don't want to. I probably wouldn't draft an ultra early game comp. Like it just doesn't really make sense to like try to force it. I think because if you get to 15-20 minutes in game and you guys are dead even, I would definitely put way more money that they're going to win the game.
Yeah.
So cool.
Right, this was a really fun episode.
Yeah. We had some actual legitimate debates on this one, discussions, because I do think that there are certain things that we just will disagree on at times. But I'm willing to admit, I think you convinced me that Fearless is not viable as a total season type format, because until they announce that Worlds is Fearless, we can never ever leave that. And I don't think other regions want that. Yeah, we're not. Koreans are not going to allow us to go full Fearless.
Koreans are so I don't want to say disrespectful, but it's so rude when there's an international tournament that is lined up for the after the LCK Cup, which is their like first split, right? Yeah. They are actively not even tracking stats. Like, you know how in Demacia Cup and Kespa Cup, like those stats don't really get added to your, like when we used to have IEMs back then, we wouldn't really like be like, oh, he's played 6 games of Fizz. but it was like,
Right.
freaking TSM1 IM back in 2015. No one counted that as an international world champion.
Right.
Like it is so. I find it so disrespectful the fact that they're not treating it like a legitimate split when we see like freaking Smash coming into the season. Basically, his entire career is set because of his debut, like going out completely destroying Gen G, like having an amazing performance. And
I was just saying that this morning to my girlfriend. I was like, I cannot believe T1 finally beat Gen G, and it was because they subbed the player. Like,
I just find it so disrespectful to the viewers. Like, what do you mean? Like, you shouldn't have an international spot if you are not counting this split. That's my argument. If LCK is not counting this split towards like their player careers, they should not have a spot in first stand. They should be the home field. Everybody should fly to Seoul, Korea, and they don't get a team because you didn't care about it. If you did, you would actually pay attention. You would have the stats there. You'd have everything there. Your casters wouldn't be calling it, oh, it's a for fun split. You think Ruler came all the way back from his? You think he let go of his 3-year, multi-million-dollar contract and took a huge pay cut to play on Gen G so that he could for fun?
Yeah, it is really weird, the narrative around it from them. Then I didn't know they weren't tracking stats. Like, they're not going to count them on records or anything. Like,
I think that's true. I mean, that's what it's been said multiple times. I've seen it multiple times, but maybe that's
crazy.
Not true.
To be fair, that's also in the casters, right? The casters should never talk about the event in a way other than like, hey, this is like, our casters have done a great job hyping up what this split means.
Agreed.
Right? Like, in terms, like, they've been doing a great job of saying LTA South, like, we're really excited for us to go, win and be able to go compete against the South, all that stuff. I think that from a PR perspective, they have to emphasize the importance of the first split in order for it to actually matter. LEC just did a terrible job of that. Like, they were like, oh yes, they won, the spring split or whatever, and they get this trophy. They played for 6 weeks. Like, I was like, it's a joke. Like, they basically played 3 weeks and then they were into playoffs. I don't understand how that's like. How is that even like? How are you comparing that trophy to the year before winning like the spring split? Like, that is not even close. And that's why you kept seeing like all these weak teams that didn't even end up making worlds winning trophies. It was like, it's kind of fluky. But no, I think LCK should for sure approach this more seriously. No, are you saying that you're upset that they sub Smash in because it showed that they didn't care? Or
no. I'm upset the fact that the LCK itself is not considering this split. Like, I'm saying, look at Smash. He comes in, he absolutely smashes, pun intended, and now his career is set. In what you like and you're not even respecting the fact that this is career-defining moments for these players.
I see.
I think the LCK is actively doing poorly with like treating these players and their drive and their motivation by saying, "Oh, this is a for fun split." It's like, no, Smash is playing for his life.
Yeah, I mean, this is his debut. Like, this is the most important series he's ever played.
Exactly.
Where do you think Gumayusi is going?
I think he stays on T1 for the rest of the year. I think they subbed him back in and out. Even though Smash is smashing, I think at some point T1's going to slump and Guma's going to come back and he's going to look revitalized.
Sure. It's too disrespectful to him to not put him. He didn't do anything wrong either. It wasn't like Gumayusi started playing terrible and that's why they subbed out. It was like, you want to give your rookie a chance, but I definitely don't see them like, just completely 180ing and that would be a shock. I think then a lot of the T1 fan opinions about like, why did you do this? Then that starts to get more able to be discussed, because like, what did Guma do wrong to get subbed out even?
Yeah.
But I think from a perspective of like, if you're a GM and you have some really, really strong talent on your lineup and you sort of have a chance to play them in real world settings without too much consequence, it kind of makes sense to do it early. Maybe he is the ADC of the future and they can sell Guma's contract. I don't know.
But I think next year Guma's gone. I think this year is gonna exactly what happened when Guma ended up starting instead of Teddy. That's like Guma got a lot of starting time, then International came around and Teddy was like the starter. And the next year it was Guma and Teddy was like, I think it was Junior that he went to back then, way back when they still existed. Yeah.
So, but the interesting thing, I mean, I doubt Joe Marshall will do this again, but this was the situation with Berserker when he came to NA, was that
all three of them actually? Yeah.
They were thinking about starting Berserker, and then he wasn't going to beat out Guma that year, so they kept Guma UCN, and that's why Berserker left.
Yeah.
He wanted to play, so they sent him to NA. But I think that was a unique deal between T1 C9. And again, my theory was because we also sent some Valorant players their way. Like,
oh, I thought it was an LS thing, honestly, because LS was going to coach.
It was the LS. It was LS was going to coach, so he was willing to broker a negotiation with Joe Marsh to get Berserker over. Yeah, again, this is pure speculation, but then there was us sending Zeta over to them to basically kickstart their Valorant team, and now Zeta's coaching, like he's the assistant coach for T1 with Autumn, who also coached on C9.
Interesting.
So Autumn is T1's Valorant coach now, their head coach. So it's interesting. There was this like simultaneous trade of assets that only makes sense when you think, well, it benefits both teams to do this, right?
Yeah, I didn't know about like the fact that it's more than just, you know, the league. If you think about it from like a business perspective, yeah, it could make sense. Like, hey, you give us this, we'll give you this. Actually, I was trying to find where I saw the stat, like the idea that they're not counting stats. I know the fact that the casters are treating it like non-official.
That's wrong.
That I've heard. I should have heard.
Yeah.
But I found this post saying the format difference is jarring because BLG Bin in the last 2 years played more games than Rogue Larson in his entire 5-year LEC career. That's crazy. And in NA we get less games, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's always been an issue, right? Like with LPL, LCK getting best of threes every time. Like the amount of competitive experience that they get year to year is exponentially greater than us over time. It's crazy. I mean, you don't even want to like count how many series Faker, how many games, competitive on-stage games of League of Legends Faker played over the last 2 years compared to any of our players is like, you know, like it's easily 10 times as many. I think. Yeah.
All right.
Well, I'm glad they're experimenting with some format changes. So
yeah, this was a fun stream. I just want to shout out to all the people that came. I know I've like over the past week, I've had over like 1,400 new people come to the channel. So welcome to everyone. I think LTA is back. A lot of people are excited. I'm trying to beat David. I think that was the key. As soon as I start saying, hey, subscribe because I'm trying to beat David to 8K, a lot of people have been subbing, so it's been nice. I've been getting so many messages saying like F David, sub to you. I'm like, okay, all right, it works.
That's awesome. All right.
Yeah.
If you guys want to sub to my YouTube channel as well.
Absolutely. I'll leave a link in the comment. Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. I don't even post that much on YouTube. I need to do more, but I'm not really in the same area of content that Cloud is. So I really appreciate you bringing me in. I love doing discussions on League stuff. So I appreciate you having me.
No, thanks for coming on.
All right, man. We'll talk.